So, Brad, we've probably worked together for 10 plus, 10. I was going to say.
Yeah,
so
definitely 10
I know it's been
years.
right around at least 10 for it.
Yep.
So your background's pretty cool. You were a lender for how long?
10 years.
10 years. And so now you've been a realtor for at least 10.
Yeah, so actually going on 13.
13. So you get the cool background, and I think that's what's the coolest part about whenever I get to talk, you know exactly what I'm talking about when it's a pre-qual or we're having an issue on. You get to kind of sniff out the BS per se, where if the lender is telling you, oh, we're having this, you get to kind of see where it's like, no, they don't know what they're talking about, or if they're trying to cover something up for it.
Right.
So you get it, but also on the appraisal parts of it. So like on your side of things, how does being a past lender help you be a better realtor?
That's a great question. One of the best things about actually being a lender and now doing what I do, every appraisal that came through my desk, or when I was a lender, I'd pull those up and I would try to understand how property values, happened and where the market values were pulled from. And I would analyze those just about every time, just to understand, hey, where's this value at? And now today, when I'm pricing a property or when I'm giving advice to someone on, hey, this is what I think you should write for an offer based on another agent's asking price, I'm double checking that, to make sure. It's very rare that I have a short appraisal, but when I do, I can pull that thing out and I can analyze it and I can make sure that we're using all the right comps, that we should be using and getting that stuff all together. If I have a short appraisal, it's generally, a new construction that was overbuilt where they just put too much into it, or a very slight shortage. And so I can have those conversations intelligently to try to understand, hey, why did this come in low? So that's been very helpful.
Well, and especially too when you're looking at it to know if the value is there to be able to try it, especially right now in today's market of trying to be able to get a seller credit on it, if it's going to appraise out for it or not, at least to be ahead of the game. There's a lot of agents that will just ask for it and hope that it appraises out, where you probably know, like, we're going to be fine if we do this or this, rather than cross our fingers and hope.
Yeah, right. I just ran into a scenario the other day. Buyers looking at purchasing a multifamily property, and the price is about $15,000 higher than a comparable that's like literally right across the road. And so we had a hard conversation. This young buyer is excited about buying this property. We wrote an offer on it for what we thought it would appraise at. Sellers came back and rejected our offer. We had the $2,000 question. Do you want to spend money on an inspection and an appraisal? And then at the end of the day, we can't renegotiate. And so buyer is still, holding off and waiting for that right property to come along. And so those are great conversations to be able to have with people and to prevent problems from, rising down the road. And so I don't like surprises, and I tell my clients that I don't do surprises. And so we really work hard to make sure that we can circumvent all that stuff, and having that mortgage experience, having that ability to be able to read an appraisal, and have those conversations with, lenders about, hey, how do we structure this to make it work? I get all that. I understand where that stuff all comes from. And Kyle, your claim to fame with me is that you'll listen to me. Not all lenders appreciate that demeanor, and so I can have a conversation with you, and we have that time, hey, can we do this? Yep. Will this work, or will that work? And so I try to be really careful with that and stay in my lane, and I respect your position and what you do. But thank you for having those conversations and helping put things together. We're a great team.
Well, and especially for the one thing that you said there that caught what kind of triggered something. Especially in our world, it separates the top to the bottom, and it's the preventable. Like especially with the lending experience, and then having the 13 years of realtor experience, is catching those problems before they come up. Because a lot of it's like what I always like to say: if there's smoke, there's probably a fire somewhere.
Right.
what in circumstances with using that background did it save somebody money by seeing something that could have been an issue that you were able to get ahead of it?
Yeah.
So that way it's an issue in the first 5 days or as you're showing houses versus being an issue when the appraisal comes back in 10 days before closing.
Right.
Like, has there been scenarios like that where you...
A couple of scenarios that I can think of. One, we were out looking at properties, and this customer was actually going to be an FHA buyer, and the property itself had some peeling paint, had some other potential safety issues, trip hazards with cracked concrete, different things like that. And so, when we structured the deal, in any deal for that matter, when I see those things arise, what we try to do is negotiate those repairs in up front. And if we can't, we set the buyers up to say, hey, we may have to deal with this in some way, shape, or form down the road. And if it's not possible, then the buyers they'll just kind of hang tight, and they'll back off and continue to look for something else. We don't want our clients to regret the purchase or set them up, again, like you say, just for things to go haywire down the road. We get deals under contract and they close, and that's our goal. So, I remember a story about a scenario where buyer had purchased a home. I was representing the client. Buyer had written an offer. We ended up getting our title policy back, and there was a program that seller had been under that he was required to own the property for a certain amount of years. It was a state-funded program. And he was 4 or 5 months short of the end of that, the day that we were supposed to close. What we did is we actually got on the phone and had a conversation with the people, that's with South Dakota Housing actually, or the state of South Dakota, and we were able to get them to release that mortgage and allowed us to close without any extra cost to the seller. I have a lot of tenacity. I see a problem. I'm not afraid to make those phone calls and try and figure that stuff out. And so we learned a long time ago to try to be resourceful when it comes to those things. So I feel like my lending background let me know that who to talk to, number one, and number two, how to have an intelligent conversation with that person about what was going on in the sale.
Well, and especially for going the extra mile to get the deal done. Because a lot of people would have thrown up their arms like, oh, we don't know what to do. It's not going to be worth the phone call or not even try.
Right.
And just let it sit from there and say you have to wait for the 4 months to pass rather than pounding the phone to get to the right person to make it happen.
Right.
So
Yeah. So I love those things. I love those challenges. So, matter of fact, that's one of the things. I don't ever want to be a lender again, to be honest with you, Kyle. I appreciate people like you who are in your field and in your lane. But that is the one part that I miss, is being a firefighter, and figuring out those problems. And whenever I can get involved in helping with something like that, and making suggestions, about proper procedure to make sure that things stay in line, anywhere from the lending world to the title world to getting it to closing. If there's steps that need to happen, I understand those steps, so that we don't take a sharp turn this way and all of a sudden now it's going to delay it 3 more days or 4 more days or a week or 2 or whatever it is.
Yep.
We try and circumvent those things so that things happen properly.
Yep.
And so I have that knowledge, and I'm blessed to actually have that.
Yep. Well, and especially for the experience part, just for on our side of things, to be the firefighter, it's all catching the issue before it starts. Where if there's, I always like to say, it's like if there's smoke, there's a fire causing it.
Exactly.
Like there's something that it's hiding that's gonna rear its ugly head later on, and especially for the experience part of it on your side of it. With being the 10 years in mortgage and the 13 as a realtor, if you walk into the house, you can already point out like, yep, that's going to be an issue, or that's going to be an issue, or
100%.
the foundation sliding out a little bit, like, yep, that's going to be an issue.
Yep.
And it makes everything better. Just because I've seen it a handful of time on our sides where, I mean, I had a kind of and I always hate to use the scare tactic of it, but it matters on who you use for when you're buying a house and making sure they have that experience. Like, I had an agent at one time tell a person they didn't need the home inspection, that it was a waste of money. And found that out the day of closing, that they said to not do it.
Wow.
And then when they did their final walkthrough, one of the toilets didn't work. And they couldn't do anything about it. And this realtor pushed him into buying this house, come to find out, and really pushed him to do it without anything. And then they ended up having about $30,000 worth of fixes on this house.
Ouch.
And it's like, those are steps that, as an experienced agent, you would never not recommend to have it, especially on I think the house was probably built in the 50s. It was in Lenox. I remember that part of it, but it was an older home.
Yeah.
Or like, I've had another one where an agent told them not to have a home inspection done, and they had termites that ate a support beam in town.
Oh my gosh.
And they had to redo that complete support beam.
Yeah.
So then I think that goes to the importance of a home inspection is like, a home inspection costs $500, but it can save you $30,000 down the line by doing it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just making sure that you always have that done, because it's worth the insurance policy.
Yeah, absolutely.
For it.
Yeah. When I was a lender, for several years, I'd actually did inspections as well, got my license and did inspections. And so as I'm walking through the homes, not only can I point out those things that are going to be potential issues with some of our government programs, again, like FHA, VA, rural development, those loans require a certain condition when it comes to the home. And they want to make sure there's no safety hazards, there's railings and again, just like the trip hazards of concrete and peeling paint, bad roofs, overall condition, issues, grading, just letting buyers know that, hey, this is what could come up. And what I find is if a buyer is aware, of things, they feel way better about it, even if they decide to walk away or especially if they go forward, they know what to expect. And I feel like that's been huge. And so I would always recommend a home inspection to any buyer purchasing a home, because no matter what, unless you're showing up at the house and you've got a ladder and you're jumping in the attic and you're getting up on the roof and you're doing all these different things, you still don't know what you don't know. And that inspection takes about 3 hours, and our showings are generally about 20 minutes to a half hour. So to actually say that you're doing an inspection or that you have done your due diligence without actually having that inspection done, in my opinion, is set up for a recipe for failure. And so anyway, it is a super important part of the process. I have been able to prevent a lot of inspection issues going into a home just by walking through and seeing what I can see, and trying to negotiate some of the repairs. If we know up front that the house has got an outdated electrical panel, make that recommendation right there to say, hey, let's make that part of our offer, that the seller would update that electrical service up front. And then you're not trying to negotiate that halfway through, the old fuses that are in homes. We had a scenario years back where the client got an estimate for his homeowner's insurance, and his homeowner's insurance on a $180,000 house was going to be $3,500 a year, and actually it disqualified him from his loan.
Yep.
And so we were able to actually go back to the seller and get that electrical service. We had already negotiated it, to be done. That had to be done immediately, so that person could qualify for their loan. So that was a great success story.
Yeah, absolutely. And especially I think it goes into the part where you educate the clients as you're going through it, like the electrical panel. What's one thing you think most clients would say about you during the process and what you look out for, just on prior experiences?
I think if you talk to 20 of my clients, a lot of them would all say that there was no pressure, to purchase, to rush into something. They would tell you that they knew I was looking out for them, and working through some of the things that we have to work through as agents, they would not have wanted to go alone. And I hear that a lot from my clients. They say, "Hey, Brad, we just really appreciate everything that you did. We couldn't have done this without you." And hearing that, it gives me great joy. I appreciate that more than anybody would ever know, because that's what I like to do, and I like to look out for my clients and have them make decisions that that are good, and take care of them for their future, and they know what they're getting themselves into.
Yep.
So,
well, I think what shows for a lot of that is the repeat business for it. Once you've been in it and you do a good job for so many times, they start coming back and back and back again.
Yeah.
Like we have a closing tomorrow or Monday on one that's repeat. And actually, it's tomorrow.
Yeah.
That's a repeat. And
it is.
so
Yes.
those are always the most fun too,
Yeah.
just because
They
know them, they've been through it. It's just more fun. It's just everything.
Yeah.
I'd say the second time and third time it gets easier every single time that they do it too, especially on our side of things is more fun just because it's just going to be smooth sailing from there and what to look out for.
It is, and the thank yous through the process say it all. You just and this particular client that you're talking about, this couple they are the salt of the earth type of people, and to watch them trust through the process with their lender, you, and also myself as a realtor, is rewarding. And just being able to help them through some repairs on their sale and getting them into their new construction, has been so rewarding. It has been just wonderful, and they're again, they're just great people. So.
Well, yeah, and especially for on that, it's fun helping the great people because it's more fun for everything all around. If there was one thing for being on the realtor side and lender side, what's the one thing you enjoy most about being a realtor that you were able to use some of that lending experience from?
Structuring deals and negotiating. So my absolute favorite thing in my job is showing homes. Without a doubt, I love going out and showing homes and giving people ideas and helping them through that selection process, and getting their minds kind of turning a little bit about, hey, did you think about this? Did you think about this? And it's like, no, didn't, but thank you. That's what we need to know. And so it's a process of elimination as you get out and look at those first few homes. And so that's the thing from that side. But my second favorite thing is negotiating. And in our market, we've done a ton of competing. You find the good houses, and guess what? More than one person generally wants those homes. And so just being able to negotiate through that, knowing how to value the home. So if the buyer is excited about it, is willing to pay over asking, for instance, if we feel like the value is there, 100%, Kyle, that's the one thing that I've used my lending experience into my real estate, business that has helped me the most. And that's just being able to give that advice. Again, back in my lending days, I would look at those purchase contracts and pay attention, to how those deals were negotiated, as well as looking at the appraisals to see how they were valued. And so I just, that stuff just stuck like glue. And so as I'm going through this process, it's just awesome and fun to be able to, work through that.
Yep.
So, and by the way, I still get as giddy as a 2-year-old when I get a referral. When I pick up a client, I'm going to be 56 years old here in a little bit, and I still get as excited about it today as I did my first deal. Yep. So I just love that, and it's so rewarding. It's the best compliment, to get a referral.
Yep. Well, especially on the negotiating part, there's so much that you have to adjust with when you negotiate too. Because the cool part on our business, and you're in the real estate side, is the seasonality that you can change negotiating on what you can negotiate for and what you can negotiate for. Like in the springtime to wintertime, you're more apt to be able to get a seller concession than what you are in April, May. So just being able to go with the ebbs and flows of it.
Right.
What are your thoughts? So it's January 2026. What are your thoughts on what this year is going to be like?
2026 has started out very busy for me. And I was just comparing numbers from 2025, same time last year to this year. And I'm up about 15% just in my world.
Yep.
Okay. And so what I'm learning is I'm expecting our business to be up somewhere between 15 and 20% this year. And so, and that's actually a national statistic that we're expecting that.
Yep.
Buyers still need to move. Owners still need to sell in certain cases, for whatever reason that it is. It's important to have those good conversations. Make sure that if you're going to sell and you're going to upgrade or you're going to do whatever you're going to do, make sure it makes sense, because it's not a cheap adventure these days. And so those are always conversations I have with my buyers and sellers. So we sit down and we just say, hey, is this really the time? Yep. And so, and what I've found is it may not be the time right now. And soon after, a year, 2 years down the road, all of a sudden it's starting to make sense, and I love to get those conversations started early, and it's fun to see those guys come back, 2 years later or whenever, and do something. So, so anyway, that's been my experience with that.
Absolutely. And I think one thing you said there for getting started too early or getting that conversation done early is with real estate, anytime you try and rush real estate, and I know you can attest to this one and agree with it, is whenever you try and rush it, it makes it more stressful on everybody. Mm-hmm. Like if you try and if you're not approved, you go looking at houses this weekend, you fall in love with one, it condenses everything down, and there's a bigger chance something is going to get missed. Mm-hmm. And then it's just stressful on the borrowers, it's stressful on buyer's agent, listing agent, title company, lender, on right. Everybody. Right. So it's just like I always say, you're always better off to start too soon than too late.
Correct.
Yep. Especially now we actually do a soft credit pull, so it's not a hard inquiry right off the bat, so we can make sure everything's good. I actually met with 2 clients that are going to be selling and buying this fall already, and I've had them in the office already. And I guarantee you, they're going to have a lot better experience than somebody that's going to fly by the seat of their pants and try and get approved and then rush into it because all their ducks are in a row. We have more time. It's going to be easier. Mm-hmm. It's just better to take that time and get it done right.
Yeah, absolutely. You never know what might be popping out there on credit that you don't know about. Yep. And if you can get those things either A, corrected, or B, pay a credit card down. Yep. Something like that's going to boost your credit score. Yep. 75 or 100 points, get you a better rate. Just being in the know. I mean, it's not what most people do. So prepping for that, Kyle, kudos to you for doing that, because that's huge. Yep. I try and do the same thing with sellers. Yep. And I'll meet with a buyer early on too, just to kind of get their standards figured out and help them learn about what it looks like, and talk about the process a little bit way early on if they want. But from a listing standpoint, people are always trying to get their homes ready, and they're like, well, hey, we should do this, this, and this. The conversations that I have with them is like, okay, do you feel like that's going to really add value to your home, or where are you going with this? Yep. And I'll bet you 75% of the time people have plans to do things that aren't going to improve their sale, and they're not going to improve any purchase price or help that. And so they're great conversations to have early on, even if you're looking at doing something a year or 2 down the road. And I actually prefer that, so people can spend that time and get ready, and also maybe enjoy their upgrades a little bit if they're going to, do some things that are going to be, cosmetic. Yep. So it's that's all good. Never rush the process. And oh, by the way, trust the process. Yep. So if you trust the process, it will take care of yourself. When you start forcing it, like you said, things just start going sideways. Yep. and everything just kind of starts going haywire, and everybody gets uneasy, and we don't like that.
Just to wrap up, what's one piece of advice you would give to buyers in 2026?
Trust the process. Absolutely trust the process. Let the process take care of itself. Have a conversation with your lender. Talk to your agent, your real estate agent. Make sure that what you're looking and tried to obtain is reasonable. And set good expectations as you're getting into the process.
Absolutely, couldn't agree more.
Yep.
So rock and roll.
All right, thank you, Kyle.
Yeah.